Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Blue Heart Podcast. And this is our Murder and Mayhem segment with Lieutenant Joe
and Marisa Joy.
So when we last left here, we were talking about the murder that's the subject of my book, The Investigation, and how it's investigated and what goes on. And we got to the point where we talked about the cast of characters.
Yeah, we talked about the cast of characters, a little bit about the crime itself, timeline, how it went down. We got some of the facts in, regarding the crime scene itself. So I think we're picking up where the point they have him in custody.
They have him in custody. So here we go for part 2. Remember our sponsors, Blue 360 Media, RiotTint.com, and MedicalEssentialDiagnostics.com, right? 3 great companies that can help you. All right, so here in part 2. So you're right. Now we have this guy in custody. And I'm not going to go into the details of the funky things that happened, but they're all in the book. And now funky, I told you the lieutenant had some difficulty with stress. Well, somebody said something to him about this guy talking to me. And the lieutenant says, hey, I had gone down and I had read him his Miranda in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, now, first of all, the lieutenant insisted that I Mirandize him in the backseat of the police car at the murder scene. And I was trying to be polite and respectful and said, Lieutenant, we should take him into headquarters, not in the backseat. But let me tell you something, that kind of guy. He says, you go read him Miranda, turn on the MVR camera in the car and ask him what happened. Well, I tried and he wouldn't listen. Go do it. So I go to the guy and I read him his Miranda and he says, I know my rights. You've arrested me before. And I said, I understand, but I'm going to give you your rights anyway.
He's like, I know this drill.
He does. I said, so I read him his rights and he says he understands. Now, one of the first things you're going to do here when you have any suspect, keep in mind that they are very self-centered. They're always worried about themselves, not getting in trouble necessarily, but they're always worried about themselves.
What can I get? What can I do?
Their best interests, right? So this guy's covered in blood, bones, and chunks of meat. So the first thing I do, knowing that the camera's on also, because who's going to watch the camera later on?
Mm-hmm.
Judge, jury, everybody else is going to watch. How did I behave as a cop with this guy?
Yeah.
So I ask him, are you hurt? Robert, are you hurt? Are you injured? You have, looks like blood and everything all over you. No, I'm fine. So I read him his Miranda and he says he understands. He says, I'd like to go lay down and then I'll talk to you. I said, are you asking for a lawyer? No, I'm not asking for a lawyer. I'll talk to you. I just want to lay down first. Now you got to imagine his mental state.
Yeah.
He's fried now. He had this adrenaline dump.
Yeah.
And now he just killed and murdered and dismembered 2 people that he knows and loves.
And not only the physical aspect, but when you're coming down from the shock, like you might have been enraged, but that's your mother of your child. She's dead now. Yeah.
Absolutely. So he's kind of freaked out. And I say, okay. And I go and tell the lieutenant he wants to lay down and he'll talk to us later. It's okay, Lieutenant, now take him to headquarters. Should have done that first. So keep that in mind. Get your suspect out of there, get him to your ground, to your house, go to the police station, right? So they take him back and forensics is waiting there for him. And they put blankets all out. They sat him down and they took all the evidence off the guy. And, they took the bone and everything. Then they photographed him. Then they cleaned him up, right? Made sure he was okay, cleaned him up, and they put him in a cell. So all these MVRs are running in the police cars all over. And at some point, a sergeant says to the lieutenant, so what did he tell Pangaro? And the lieutenant says, he told him he wants a lawyer. Maybe he'll talk to him later. Now, he never said that. He never asked for a lawyer. He said he wanted to lay down. The lieutenant got it wrong. He said the wrong thing. Well, when those videotapes got to the prosecutor's office and they're looking at it, because we recorded this guy for 3.5 hours in an interview.
Yeah.
And if he had asked for a lawyer in the back of that car, everything's over. Everything we got would go out the window. No evidence. So, of course, the prosecutor's office goes crazy. And they're like, how can you let that? And I said, he never asked for a lawyer. And the lieutenant had to explain himself. So they took the MVR tapes. They were VCR at the time. And they sent them to Quantico, Virginia that day. And they want the FBI to break it down. So they hear me saying Miranda rights, the guy saying yes. And he never said he wanted a lawyer. That was a huge nightmare. So we have to watch what we say.
How's that avoided? How's that avoided for these folks?
Okay. So one of the things when we take photographs at a crime scene, right? That's no big deal. It's a hard picture.
Yeah.
Make sure you don't have anything in the pictures that shouldn't be there. Flashlights, your sandwich, You know, I can't tell you how many old crime scenes. You got cops walking around with cigarettes and unbelievable today. None of that should be in there. But it is sometimes. Sometimes people see a gun or they see a piece of evidence and they take pictures and then they pick it up and look at it and then they move it over there and there's pictures of it moved. So don't touch anything, right? If it's a weapon and there's people around, you have to secure it. That's one thing. But other than that, don't touch it.
And you said clear everyone out. Get everyone out.
Everyone gets out.
I always think of the JonBenet Ramsey case. And when we talk about securing a crime scene, it's so notoriously not secured ever. They just invited family and friends in. So get everyone out.
And that's the thing. So everybody out, you secure your crime scene. You set somebody up at the door, a patrol officer with a pen and paper. Anybody that wants to go in that crime scene, you write down their name. That keeps a lot of looky-loo government officials out, other cops, because you're gonna have to testify you came in a crime scene.
Yeah.
So you do that, right? And the sergeant did all of this. He was smart. This guy really did a great job. So anyway, this guy is now back at headquarters doing this thing. I go in and see the crime scene, and I made my views of the crime scene. Anytime you go into a scene, you bring stuff with you, and every time you come out, you take things out with you, like things on your feet, your hands, anything you touch. So you got to glove up. You got to put booties on, right? So that you can come out, and then we put a big garbage can with a plastic bag in it. Every time you went in and out, you left your gloves and your boots in there. Because if we had to get DNA or anything off of stuff that we touched with our feet, there could be more samples in there, right? And we have control of it. We know where it is, right? So now I'm going to go back to headquarters and talk to this fella. Now, again, I knew him. I had arrested him multiple times over the course of his life. They had cleaned him up, and he is sitting in the jail cell. And when the way it works in Monmouth County is that the local detective, which was me, is partnered with a county detective for a homicide case. This way, the prosecutor's office is right on board with everything that's done in the case.
Yeah.
We decided to record this guy. It was the first time we recorded this guy. And now my partner and I go in there and we sit him down. He's all cleaned up. And we do Miranda. We read him his Miranda rights. He signs off on it, and he signs it Robert Mazzella, RM, Robert Mazzella, right?
All right.
We start talking to him, and he basically tells us in a nutshell, I could tell you what happened. I can't tell you why. Now, you say to yourself, he went in, he murdered the mother of his child and his elderly grandmother, cut their head, hands, and feet off. How do you wrap yourself around that and tell that story? So he was obviously having a really
I'm not shocked he couldn't tell you why.
He was just having a really
vocalize that, yeah.
So when he was saying two things, I can tell you what happened, I can't tell you why. We would say, okay, what happened? And he'd say, well, yes, bad things happened in the house, because he really was confused. He didn't want to talk to us. He was trying to avoid, he didn't know what to say. He did not know what to say. So he says, hey, can I go lay back down? I want to lay down. I'll talk to you some more later. So we said, okay, bring him in on it, put him back in the cell. About an hour later, we check on him, got him something to eat, something to drink. Do you want it? Yeah, I'm ready to talk to you. And he comes out. We do Miranda again on camera. Robert Mazzella, and he signs it. Now we start talking the same thing. I can tell you what, can't tell you why. Tell you what, can't tell you why. So at this point, as an investigator, you're not necessarily always going to have in your head, well, I go from A to B to C. Sometimes you got to think on your feet.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, what can I bring to this conversation that he will talk? So I can talk about his son. Does he care about his son? We didn't know where the kid was.
You want to get him. You want to get him to bite.
And get him to bite. Get him to start talking, right? Because he said he would talk. He waved Miranda, and here we go. So I couldn't talk about the kid because I thought that was probably too sensitive for him. We knew he was with a family member, but at the same time, we didn't know he didn't kill the whole family somewhere. Yeah. So we had cops going to find their whole family to make sure this wasn't like the last stop.
I was just going to say.
And he got everybody, which he didn't do. But we had to go check that. You had to make sure that there were no other victims anywhere. So what I came up with was this. I knew that the family was well liked in the neighborhood. They had been there for many, many years, and the neighbors all liked them, even though they were a mob family. Nobody cared because they didn't do mob things in the street.
Yeah.
You know,
no horses' heads.
And none of that. There was no horses' heads ever in the neighbor's bedrooms. Right? We didn't have that. So what I asked him was a question. I said, hey, Robert, do you like your neighbors? And it caught him off guard. And he looks at me and goes, yeah, I love my neighbors. Why? Why would you ask that? Yeah. And I said, well, right now, your neighbors are running around, locking their doors, pulling their kids out of school, nailing their windows shut because there's some killer running around that just butchered 2 people.
They're terrified.
And he heard that and he bit and he goes, No, no, no. You tell those people that everything,
They
it's
don't have
okay.
to worry.
They don't have to worry. It's me. It's just me. Just me. There's nobody else out there. Now, if that's all he said up to that point and he shut up and asked for a lawyer, is that an admission?
Is it?
It sounds like an admission, right?
Mhm.
You're worried about a killer, killed two people. No, there's nobody else, just me.
Me.
Right? So
implying that just me is the killer.
Just is the killer. So you could certainly look at that. So then we started talking. And after a while, he says, he loves the family, he loves everybody in the neighborhood. He can't tell us why. Can I lay down again? I said, okay. And we walk him into the cell and he lays down. Now, this is where I said something that changed the course of the case and could have really screwed things up bad. And it did for a while. So you got to think of everything you say. I'm trying to find a way to get this guy to move. I tried the neighbors and he made some kind of an admission, but here he is back in the cell wanting to lay down again. Yeah. So I said to him, hey, listen, Robert, just think about this. At some point, your son is going to want to know what you did to his mother. You better have something to tell him. And he started crying. He goes, I know. Of course, again, maybe an admission, right? You could maybe twist it that way. So he says, I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk to you again. Okay, I go to leave. He goes, hey, do you have a Bible? So I go and find a Bible, right? And of course, we had a psychiatrist running around going, don't give him a Bible.
Yeah, don't.
Because he's going to read it and kill himself, right? That's what everyone thinks. So we got him a Bible and he's reading. He goes, I'll let you know when I'm ready, right? And okay. So we about 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, he's waving at the camera. We go in again. He goes, I'm ready to talk to you now. I'm ready to tell you everything. Okay, good. So we bring him in. We sit him down. We read him Miranda again. Only this time, instead of RM, Robert Mazzella, he writes JC, 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 Jesus Christ.
I would have been so annoyed if I saw what was your first instinct? Because this nut job now is writing JC on everything. He's got something brewing up here.
He does. And I'm watching the JC and I'm looking at my partner going, what's he doing? And then I saw the Jesus Christ. And I said, okay. I said, so you just wrote down here, Robert, you just wrote down Jesus Christ. He goes, yes, I did, because that's who I am.
Oh.
I'm Jesus Christ. My grandmother is the devil. And she was passing off the baton of evil to Tina. And that's why I had to kill them. And I stabbed her. I cut my grandmother's head off. And I had to cut their head, hands, and feet off so that the evil couldn't leave from their body. And that's how I did it. I did it 500 years ago. It's in the Bible. I did it in Lebanon 500 years ago. I said, okay. And then he went through the whole story, how he cut them up. And he did it for this evil story. And he's Jesus. So we got as much out of him as we could, and we put him back in the cell, and we lodged him away. Of course, he was then charged with 2 counts of murder, weapons, possession, all that kind of stuff. Well, over the course of the next 6-8 months in trial time, as things start to go, he gets a doctor, and the defense team, or obviously he's crazy, right? So they get a psychiatrist. He convinced both the psychiatrists on the defense and the prosecutor side that he was crazy, that he really believed this.
Wow.
Now, why did he come up with this? Go back to what I said to him in the cell. You better think of something to tell your kid.
Yeah.
And he asked for the Bible, and this is that's what he made up on that spot. And he worked it through the court and got them all to believe. And the judge says, okay, you'll go to the mental hospital until you're well, and then you'll be released.
Wow.
No trial.
No trial.
You go to mental hospital because you're mentally ill, and off you go.
That's
now we knew this was crazy. We knew that this was not true, and we made appeals, and they wouldn't listen to us. Well, while he was in the mental hospital, he's talking to other patients, people that are in there, criminal people.
They always talk.
This one guy says to him, hey, dude, how'd you do this? How'd you get here instead of prison? And he says, I made up a story and I stuck to it. Well, that guy wasn't as crazy as they all thought. He went to the authorities and said, this guy's making stuff up.
Oh,
so
wow.
They wired him up and sent him back in. He goes, okay, Robert, man, how do I do this? And he laid it out for him. How to make up your story, how to stick to your story. And they played that for the judge, and the judge says, now you go to trial.
Yeah.
Right? You made this whole thing up. Now, while he was in prison, because it was about 1.5 years, almost 2 years till he went to trial, he grew his hair out. He grew his beard out.
I wonder what he's trying to do.
Because he's Jesus, right? He's going to go with that whole Jesus thing. He couldn't come off of it.
He's in too deep now.
He got no choice. So he shows up one of his court hearings. And the judge is asking him questions, and he stands up and I forgive all of you for doing this to me again. It's the second time you're killing Jesus, right?
Oh.
So it got to be crazy.
Thank you.
Eventually we had the trial, and he was convicted of 2 counts of double homicide, and he was sentenced to the rest of his life in prison. But during the trial, he did turn over the table a couple times. I forgive you all for, crucifying me again and not believing
Yeah.
it's Jesus. And the judge sent him away, and there he sits to this day till he
Rotting
dies,
away.
till he dies in prison. But it's interesting how in the course of this crime, there were so many factors that you need to take in, and that's why I put it in the form of a book, so you can read the story and understand how to track him around, how to look at the crime scene, how to investigate the crime scene, how to interview somebody like that, and then how to go to trial and testify at trial.
It's start to beginning, and our 20-minute episodes cannot capture everything that's in there. So if they pick it up, is it going to be like a repeat of everything we just talked about?
There's so much more detail in here than, especially the learning part. I didn't touch really on anything of that. So there's a learning part for each segment of the investigation. And then there's a lot more details about the characters that were involved and who did what and who said what. So it's a really very interesting read. I wrote it as a screenplay.
Yeah.
And then I decided to turn it into a learning book. So this is part 2 here of Murder and Mayhem with Lieutenant Joe and
Marisa Joy.
Right. And this was our story of the investigation, the Mazzella murders. So
check it out. Buy one for the cop in your life.
That's good advice, Marisa.
I know.
Thank you.
Came up with that.
You're very good about it. So listen, everybody. Thanks for watching. Remember, what are you supposed to do? Subscribe, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. Ring the bell. You get to see more Marisa Joy, right? That's more important than seeing me. So have a great day, everybody.